All right, everybody, welcome. We are going to start our recording of this meeting, and I'm going to try to start on time. I promised everybody we'd try to get in and out within a certain amount of time, and that would be our goal today. For those of you who've been teaching for a number of years, you'll probably remember we have a speech secretary here at the OSSAA that helps us. For many years it was Bev, and used to email Bev, and then we had another young lady that was with us for about 5 years, and then starting this past year we have Missy, and I'm going to ask Missy to say a word or two to everybody. If you are running a tournament, Missy is the one that sends you the extemp topics. Missy's the one that hollers at you if you don't send in your stuff. Missy, why don't you say a little bit to them and tell them where you're from and what's going on.
I'm Missy Jennings, and I've been with OSSAA for about a year, since August, and I'm learning something new every single day. So I'm excited to interact with each of you, and in one way, hopefully we can get through all this, and good luck for your new school year.
Thank you, Missy. I appreciate you introducing yourself to everyone, and feel free to leave the meeting or stay with it, whatever you feel like doing, okay, at this point. So anyway, that's Missy, everybody. Missy is the new speech person here in our office to help out. First of all, welcome, everyone. Appreciate you being here, and I know that you have a lot of questions. I will start off by telling you we had a music meeting like this last week. We had about 300 people who watched it live. We've had another 450 watch it online. So we will post this up for other people who couldn't make the meeting. And I started that one, and I'm going to start this one with the same way. If you are tuning in, hoping to get all of your answers to all of your questions, go ahead and click goodbye, because I'm telling you right now, I don't have all the answers. My goal today is to give you some information, to disseminate some information to you, and hopefully will if calm your nerves or excite your nerves, or at least give you more information than you had tomorrow, okay, or the day before, or whatever. This is a very fluid situation, as all of you are aware. I am 100% sure that some of the information I'm going to give you today is going to change in the next 3 to 4 or 5 days. It's a constant changing process. But I wanted you to have some facts that you could go and talk to your people, your school, and have some facts to move forward. So let me start off by saying to you, first of all, some housekeeping things. If you log into the speech website, many of you know that there's an invoice tab up there that allows you to see the current year and then the previous year's invoices. We are in the process of moving that right now. So if you logged in to the OSSAA speech page today under current invoices, you won't see anything. Chris Wilfong is moving that data from this year to the previous year. So we're making preparations to start a new year. If you haven't paid for your invoices for this year, please do so. The only thing that you would really owe for would be one-act plays. As you know, our regionals and our state tournament got canceled, and we certainly are not expecting you to pay for things that didn't happen. But by the same token, I want to let you know, if you log in today or tomorrow, it may be a little weird. We're moving information. The other housekeeping things that I wanted to let you all know is what happened on March the 12th. If you all will think back to March the 12th, when all this started, we had a number of you who were in the process of going to regional tournaments. We had 2 different regional tournament dates. We had things going on. I wanted you to hear from the horse's mouth what actually happened. We were in the middle of our basketball tournament, as you know, as well as our speech and debate regionals. We had a meeting in our office at 7:30 or 8 o'clock that morning with all the referees. That's a normal procedure. We meet with the referees who are going to be calling the state basketball tournament. We give them some information, and then we say, good luck, we'll see you, go on to your site. And we as staff members are required to cover basketball games. I had my little shirt and tie on, and I was getting ready to go out to Oklahoma City University and then to SNU, I believe, and we're assigned to games. We started getting some phone calls the night before about the Oklahoma City Thunder were having a game. As you know, there was a professional athlete that worked out at Del City High School. We started getting calls, oh my gosh, that guy's been tested positive for COVID-19. You have a bus full of Del City kids headed to Tulsa. You need to stop that bus. Everybody's gonna die in Tulsa if the bus gets there. All that. Mr. Jackson, my boss, had said, I'm going to check with the health authorities, and he had been checking with them all day Wednesday, all day Thursday, and we had basically been told the chances of anyone getting sick based on that casual interaction was very low. And we were told that we were not going to have any problems, and we were planning on having our basketball tournament. We were planning on having our speech and debate as well. We then received a phone call from a health authority that informed Mr. Jackson to be safe. Here's what we think we should do. Now, just between you and me and the fence post, basketball is what pays the bills, a lot of them here at the OSSAA. Speech and debate does not. One-act plays does not. Music does not. Football is not even as important as a revenue source as basketball. So I realized that there's probably zero chance that we would be canceling a basketball tournament because it's a big deal. It pays a lot of our bills. When Mr. Jackson was informed by the health officials in Oklahoma that to be overly abundantly safe and cautious, we need to cancel your tournament. I walked down and he said, we're pulling the plug, get the word out. So we had to contact the sites. And then I said, Mr. Jackson, what about our speech and debate? What about, we have 3 music contests going on today. Matter of fact, we had 3 contests where there were contests going on that day. Kids are in the auditorium playing band on stage. He said, pull the plug on everything. We're stopping everything. So we literally not only canceled the speech and debate regionals and the basketball tournament, but we canceled music contests that were in progress. There were kids on the stage that we pulled off and said, go home. So it was a major decision made by my boss. I support him in that decision. And then, of course, as you know, the history there. But I wanted you to know what happened on March the 12th was unprecedented. We have a book to follow on just about everything that happens here at the OSSAA. We didn't have a book on that one. That was totally unprecedented. And from that, as you know, schools have been canceled, et cetera, et cetera. And I just wanted you to know that the decision was not made lightly to cancel your events. We did kick around with the with the Speech Advisory Committee. Mike Patterson and I talked at great length about, could we do a virtual tournament? Do we want to do that? Is it possible? Do we have the time frame to do it? If we had a year to plan it, it's one thing, but to try to plan something like that on short notice, that was going to be a bit of a challenge. So to be honest with you, yes, virtual tournaments were considered, but we decided the best thing to do at that point was to just walk away from it. And now we're here where we're at. The biggest thing that I want you to hear from today is information. I'm going to give you information on 3 or 4 things that I hope you'll find, number 1, helpful, and number 2, motivating for you to do some things. So the first biggest question, let's answer that right now. What is the OSSAA planning to do for next year? Now, I'm going to give you my best answer as of March the 10th at 10:09 a.m. This could change, but as of right now, we in this building are planning on having fall as normal. We're planning on going forward with events as planned. Could that change? You bet. The governor could sign a bill. We have to fall in line. The state superintendent of schools, Ms. Hofmeister, could make a decision. And of course, we would have to fall in line. But right now, we realize that we lost our spring. We lost the summer pretty much for some things that we do. But we are trying to save the fall. Everything we've done is in an effort to try to save the fall. We are hopeful that we're going to have a normal fall. But we are also planning on 3 different scenarios. We have been told by our board of directors, as well as Mr. Jackson, to have 3 or 4 different scenarios in mind. Scenario 1 is come August the 1st or September, we are school as normal and the summer is gone, but the fall is going to be just like the fall of 2019. School's in session, we're all churning away, and it's totally normal as if you'd seen it in the past. That's scenario 1. Scenario 2 is we're online. Something happens between now and then. The COVID-19 spike goes up. The administrators say we're not having class, or the State Department of Education says it's not safe. Forget it. We're going to stay online. That's another scenario we're trying to plan for. Third scenario is starting the year normal, and then a spike happens, and then we go into an online scenario. We have been told as staff to try to plan for those three scenarios. Could there be a fourth scenario? Sure there is. But we feel like those are the three most likely scenarios that we're going to encounter come August the 1st. So that's the first question I wanted to get to every one of you all. Are we planning on having a year? Yes, we are. Are we planning on having qualifying tournaments, regional tournaments, speech tournament, one-act plays? Yes, we are. And because of that, let me share with you, I'm going to try to do a little screen share here with you. And what I'm going to try to show you, and Mr. Patterson, can you see that up on the screen if you can nod for me? All right. I just want to make sure you're able to see that screen share. We are updating our speech manual, and it's going online. Yesterday, we had a board of directors meeting, and they approved the minutes from our speech advisory minutes back in May. So you can take a screenshot of this, or we'll be posting this up online. We are planning on having our regional one-act plays, our state one-act plays. We also are planning on having our regular qualifying tournaments starting down here. Actually, there's some up here. Jinx is on October 9th and 10th. All this information is going to be put online for you to have. We are planning at this point to do just what we do in the past. If you'll notice, we do have a common speech and debate regional date this year. 5A, 6A, and 3A, 4 are all going on March 26, 27. State date is April 8th and 9th. So that is currently what we are planning on doing. I would also draw your attention to the speech minutes and discussion items that are going to be in the back of the book. This is what was basically voted on and talked about at our May 8th meeting. We have had a few things in there that change. Some of them, I think, are some pretty good changes, that changing the penalty time from 11 seconds to 16 seconds, all those things that come up every year. We have made some changes. I would encourage you all to do that. And as well as we have some things that we talked about that we took no action on, but at the same time we did visit. We want to let you know that the things that you asked us to talk about, we in fact did. So that's to prove to you that we're planning on having a normal year in the future, okay? So that's important that you hear that from me. Could that change? Absolutely. Here are some other facts that I want you to know, and some of them are opinionated, some of them are factual. So let me give you some factual things that I want you to know about. I'm going to also share a screen with you that I think is kind of interesting. One of the things that the National Federation of High Schools, if you're not familiar with NFHS, that's something you probably need to be familiar with. The NFHS is a term of the National Federation of High Schools, and the National Federation of High Schools has a, let me get my screen share going on up here, has an unprecedented COVID-19 study. I assume you can read that, Mike. Give me a thumbs up if you can. Very good. This is a very important study, and the reason it's important is because up till now, most everything that you've heard about classrooms and how harmful fine arts classes are have been done with smoke. They fill a room with smoke, and they have two kids debate, and they look at the smoke, and they see whether or not the air movements. It's basically on a smoke-filled room. The National Federation has decided we need to have a more intricate study. And that study is this study right here. It's an unprecedented aerosol study. And the interesting thing about this, and I'm going to give you some more data on this, but if you'll notice that there's over 80-something different organizations that have chipped in on this. And a large amount of them are music. There's some stuff in there. But if you'll notice, if we get down to the ends, the NSDA is right here. The NSDA has signed off and jumped on this as well. And this is going to be a study like nothing you've ever seen before. The reason this is important is because they are actually going to see aerosol studies. They are doing a study right now. It started out as a $37,000 study. It is now a $250,000 study. All but about 5% of it has already been paid for. They've got the funding to do it. They started last week testing at the University of Colorado Boulder, and they're doing a double-blind study at the same time at the University of Maryland. The reason that's important is one is at sea level, one is about 5,000 feet. They're trying to see if that changes. They want to do a double-blind study so that they can replicate any scenario that they get. So the interesting part about this is they are doing things that are actually going to measure the aerosol particulates. They're going to take a trumpet and they're going to blow it, and they're going to say what actually comes out the end of that horn. They're going to take two debaters and they're going to stand them 6 feet apart and let them have a debate. And they're actually going to measure what comes out of the human voice, and does more come out when you yell versus soft. And they're going to say, what if we put a plastic screen in front of them, plexiglass or mylar? Does the sound go through, but yet the particulates don't go through? What can we do to mitigate all of this? This is going to be a very, very detailed study. A study that we as fine arts people may not like. We may not like the results, but we'll at least have hard data. We're going to be able to say, you know what? A soprano singer is worse than a bass singer as far as stuff coming out of their mouth. We're going to know how far that travels. They're going to do things like music theater. They're going to actually put people on a stage. They're doing studies with children as well as adults. They're doing some very, very intricate studies, and we're going to have hard data. And it's going to say, you know what? Playing a flute is more dangerous than playing a trombone, or debating is worse than musical theater, or whatever. They're going to have some facts. Those facts are supposedly going to be delivered around the middle of July, and they hope to publish towards the end of July. Now, I know that that may be almost too late to help you in your scenario, but it's going to be good, hard data to have. And that data is going to be important for a number of reasons, okay? One of the things that I want you to have is information. That is one of my goals today, is to give you information. So one of the things I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share this link in the chat box with everybody who wants it. And I'm going to put a couple of links up there. And this is the latest link to the study. So if you click on chat down there, you can have a link to that study. It is going to be a groundbreaking precedent study. It's going to be unbelievable. I'm very impressed with the things that they've done. Okay, so once again, that's the National Federation and about 80 other organizations banding together to give us some hard data. And speech, debate, musical theater, all those things are part of that. Okay. The other thing that I think is exciting about that study is James Weaver, the gentleman who's the National Federation chairman, is part of that. Okay, he's an intricate part of it. So that kind of stuff is going on, along with another link that I just sent up to you. I'm sorry, I sent that to the wrong people. Let me send that to everybody. 1 minute. I'm going to give you two links here, just a second. The link I just put up was the second link. The first link about the study, let me put that back up, and I apologize for not doing it right the first time. Here's the other one. The second link is the study. There are state organizations. I know I see Ryan King is on here. Ryan and I are part of a committee along with some other people who have been asked by the State Department of Education to put together a paper, so to speak. If you're not aware, I think most of you probably are aware, Oklahoma has a Return to Learn paper that came out, and I'm going to share that with you right now. This is the Oklahoma Return to Learn that Ms. Hoffmeister put out just about a week ago. The interesting thing about this, in my opinion, it's written fairly vague. And the reason it's written fairly vague, I think, is because of what you're about to see here. I'm going to say there's some fine arts support, K through 12 instruction, and they talk about doing some things. They talk about world language. There's really not specific guidelines as far as what's going to happen in speech and debate, theater, or something. But if you'll notice right down here, it says coming soon, guidance for safety, practicing and sustaining interpersonal speaking skills, and also a guidance to music instruction and fine arts. Here it is, this one. This is the one I want you to see. Guidance for safely opening and sustaining fine arts classrooms. I believe they've kept it kind of vague because they know that another paper is coming out. and I have been asked to be on a committee along with some of you. There are art people, there are music people, there are fine arts people from across the state. And Elizabeth Bond, who's the fine arts person, has chaired together a committee of people. And we're going to be putting together, I believe, a paper that has something to do with things to consider. Missouri has also done a very similar document. That was kind of one of the first ones that came out. And this is the Missouri document, as you all can see that, I think, on your board. The interesting thing about all these documents is this line right here. Are these considerations requirements? And it says no. This is a list of topics that schools should consider if they're planning to make plans to reopen. It's up to the individual schools and local health department to make final decisions with precautions. So what's going to happen, and I anticipate Oklahoma being similar. I don't know. I can't speak for Ms. Hoffmeister, but I think the document that's going to be produced is going to be a list of not requirements, not mandates, but recommendations, okay? And the thing that I think that's kind of interesting about this is they do have some guidelines, and they have guidelines for speech and debate. They have guidelines for music. They have guidelines for a lot of stuff. And I'm going to scroll down to some of these to let you see what we're talking about, okay? They even have some guidelines for audiences that I think are rather interesting that I want to share with you real quick. Once again, this is Missouri's recommendation, not Oklahoma. I'm anticipating something similar to happen in Oklahoma. So they have a music, art, theater, and dance, and audience considerations. Once again, this is the third version of what Missouri has. And it's interesting, if you go through and look at what they say, they have instrumental guidelines, vocal guidelines, general music guidelines, and then they get into art, which I don't cover, so I'm going to pass that up. They get into theater and dance, and they do start talking a little bit about reorganizing, what schools should consider when opening back up. And if you'll notice, there's a big social distancing thing there. They're talking about alternative schedules. It's important to know that most of these schools, if they are forced to have 6 feet between kids, they cannot put all their kids in their class at the same time. So if you had a school with 2,000 kids, 500 ninth graders, 500 10th graders, 500 juniors, 500 seniors, they're trying to figure out, how do we get social distancing? How can that happen? And the way they're going to do it is they're going to limit how many kids are in the building. That's what most of them are doing. They're talking about making sure you disinfect the items. They don't want you to be using the same makeup for your kids and the costumes and all that stuff. And I'm not going to bore you with all this information. I will put the link in there if you like it, so that anybody who would want to read this document may do so. The other interesting thing about this, I think, is the fact that in addition to these people just being recommendations, some of the administrators are talking about, okay, if I can only put 1/4 of my kids in school and have social distancing, what kind of a class can I have? I've been in a number of meetings with administrators, superintendents, people who make those decisions, and I can tell you right now that some of the conversations going on are things like an AB schedule. You may have heard about this, where the ninth graders would come, for instance, at a high school setting from 8 to noon. And the 10th graders come from noon to 4. And then the next day on Tuesday, the 11th graders would come from 8 to noon. And then the 12th graders, the seniors, would come to noon to 3 or whatever. And then the other days you would be online. That's one possible popular option that administrators like. Another one is to have an A week and a B week. So in other words, we have sophomores and juniors, or sophomores and ninth graders coming on week 1, and then week 2 we would do juniors and seniors. The rest of the time would be virtual. That's being discussed right now. Things like kids being in pods of groups of kids, 15 or 20 kids or 25 kids, and they are going to stay together all day long. We're going to put them in one class, and we will rotate the teacher in and out. We will not bring in the kids in the hallway because that's too much contact. So once we get them in the school, we'll change the teacher from room to room. We will not have a lunchroom. We will bring lunch to the kids. We'll no longer have them leaving. And believe it or not, those kind of conversations are happening around the country. That's actually being discussed. How does that work for fine arts classes? Not so well, not so well. The other interesting thing that I want to make sure you leave here today knowing this, I'm not talking about your administrator, and I'm not talking about the great administrators that you probably have. But there are some administrators out there that do not understand the difference between a performing arts class and a fine arts class. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. There are a number of administrators that say, oh yeah, we've got that music thing covered, or we've got that speech thing covered. And what they're actually saying is, we have a music appreciation class. Well, we're teaching music appreciation, music's covered. Well, that's not the same as a performing group in music. And we're teaching art history. Well, that's not the same as actually doing the art. We're teaching theater history. And I'm going to show you some recommendations that say to do these kinds of things. That's not the same as performing arts, right? I mean, we are in the performing arts. But to an administrator, sometimes they don't see the difference. They think it's covered. So if you hear nothing else that I say to you right now, I want you to hear this. You need to advocate for your programs. You need to be the person advocating for them right now. I would suggest you visit with your administrators. Make sure that the fine arts are part of the discussion. There are some school districts that are already planning on taking over the fine arts facilities because they have the bigger rooms, the band rooms, the orchestra rooms, the theater rooms, the stage. Those are big open areas where we can put a bunch of kids. So we're going to take that and put other things in there. The bad side of that, of course, is what do we do with you? What do we do with you fine arts teachers? Well, go help with English. Go help with English or math or whatever. I have been in a number of meetings that when asked, and I asked the question, what about activities? Well, we haven't got to that yet. We're just worried about trying to teach what we got to teach here, these quote core classes. And we can argue all day that fine arts are part of the core curriculum and all that, but the administrators are having to make decisions right now, maybe not yours. Your administrators may be wonderful and they're really worried about you and your program. But there are a number of administrators out there that haven't given a second thought to any kind of an activity. So I'm going to tell you, you need to advocate. And I'm going to give you some addresses for some other websites to maybe help you for that. And I'll have plenty of time for questions later on, all right? And I'll let you all express your opinions or whatever. I'm going to go back to my screen sharing here for just a minute. I want to show you another document, if you could. This is going to be the Maryland document that just came out a couple of days ago. And they do have the same kind of a general statement about this is going to be a recommendation. We don't expect everybody to have to do this. And once again, I anticipate that this is going to be a guidance document, much like what Oklahoma is probably going to come up with. Most all of them are saying, hey, fine arts teachers need to teach what they know to do. We need to, they're making a recommendation. It needs to be taught, and that's great. But I do want to show you a couple of things in here that the theater people and drama and dance people have put together. It's interesting to note, and forgive me for taking a few pages down here. The general music stuff is in here. It's interesting to note that Maryland still considers large groups. I forgot to tell you the audience rights. Remind me to go back to that in a minute. Instrumental social teaching. They still consider vocal music dangerous, and they have that in here until further notice. This line right here. Until further updates, public singing should be considered unsafe, even with the use of a mask. So if you're a vocal music teacher there in Maryland, now they are going to give you some things to consider, maintaining your distance and all that stuff. But I think it's kind of interesting that some of the stuff that they're saying is it's pretty scary stuff still. And until we get data that says otherwise. Here's the Maryland theater considerations. As you can see, first of all, they're trying to get you away from doing group things, and they're trying to do some individual stuff like monologues and things like that. And it's telling you right now that anytime we can stay electronic, let's do that. Let's don't get kids together. The theater is primarily done as a group ensemble using digital collaboration to develop these group pieces. That's all great. So I guess you can do your one-act play virtually this year. And I know that doesn't work for everything, but this is, once again, Maryland's ideas. They talked about maintaining social distances, and these are the kind of things that I think you can probably consider coming from Oklahoma in the near future, similar recommendations. I thought it was interesting about sharing makeup, sharing scripts, talking about not doing that. If possible, textbooks should not be transported to and from schools. All these things are ideas, things for schools to consider. And once again, does it work perfectly? Probably not. But at the same time, these are recommendations that are being made. I got to go back to the Maryland document or to the Missouri document, because one of the things that I found very interesting about that was the audience rights and the recommendations for the audience. It's really interesting that they're going to tell you that they believe that your audience should come see your shows. Let me find it here real quick. Theater and dance. Here's some of the theater and dance recommendations. David, if I think somebody's got their microphone on, if y'all could mute your microphones, I appreciate it. Talked about blending and stuff, theater storage spaces, dressing rooms, and all that stuff. But here's the audience considerations for arts events. Once again, this is Missouri. And this one struck me as pretty interesting. They're saying that the seating of your patrons should be every other row and 3 seats in between the folks. So if your auditorium seats 1,000 seats, every other row we're down to 500 seats, and now we're taking about 25%. So your 1,000-seat auditorium, according to their recommendations, should only be about 250 people in there. That's tough, as you well know. Consider broadcasting for, this is again Missouri, talking about how there should be masks, people wearing masks on these events. There should be 20 feet in front of the choir to the conductor. All of these things, once again, are recommendations that I think you're going to probably see something similar in the Oklahoma documents, okay? Last but not least, I think that one of the things that you as a arts person probably need to do is just to advocate for your program. You need to probably say to your administrators, please consider what we're doing here. We need to be part of the conversation. I want you to make sure fine arts are part of the plan. So that's the studies. There's some links. Oklahoma's producing a document like that. Some of us are on that committee. I think the timeline on that is the next 3 to 4 weeks. You'll probably see something coming out. And I don't believe any of them are going to be mandates. I think it's going to be pretty much guidelines. Ryan, isn't that kind of what you thought? And I'll let you chime in. I know you're on the committee. Seemed to me like they're going to be not mandates, but guidelines. Is that correct, Ryan?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, you can email me. I'll be sending out, I think, a couple of things to you to get your opinions. A lot of you guys, I know, it's better for everyone to kind of chime in than just one person. I'm there because of the Oklahoma Thespians. I'm the chapter director of Oklahoma Thespians now. And so there I am. So if you guys have anything you want to add, I would love to hear from you. Okay. And you guys are all welcome to join Oklahoma Thespians. Okay. I'm done. Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan. I noticed that somebody had asked for a link to the Maryland document. I just put that up in the chat as well if anyone would like to see that. And like I said, that one just came out a couple days ago. In an effort to keep this thing moving forward, I do want you to know a couple of other things, and then I'm going to open it up to some comments and questions and things like that. First of all, I want to talk about the OSSAA's perspective from last year as far as finances. Let me explain to you a couple of things, and I don't want anyone to leave here saying, oh, poor OSSAA. That's not what I'm saying. I'm making you aware of some facts that we didn't even know here at the OSSAA. Fact number one, all those regional medals that we send to the 6 regional sites and all the state medals that we send out to OU and we hand out during the state week, all those trophies, all those plaques, all those medals are created in September and October, and they sit on a shelf until we need them. So when we canceled the the regionals, when we canceled that, we found out that we still get to buy all those medals because they've already been engraved. It's not like we can put the brakes on it. We had already purchased those, and quite frankly, we're trying to get those medals back from the regional sites now. We're going to see if we can reuse the ribbons, maybe, because the medals are all engraved, and they say Class 5A, Public Forum champ, and it's got a year on it. So we can't use those again. And I know a lot of you said, we put something over the top of it. We're not going to do that. Mr. Jackson's not going to allow that to happen. He's going to make sure that those things look right. It's a state event. It's a regional event. He wants it to be correct. So we're going to eat a bunch of medals. And the reason I share that with you is because not only did we eat all the speech and debate medals, but we ate the music stuff, the basketball stuff, we ate the golf and the track and all that stuff too. Financially, we have a reserve fund here at the OSSAA that Mr. Jackson is responsible to make sure he has. And we've always talked in the office for my 19 years, starting my 20th year, we've always talked about what would happen if we had a really bad ice storm during basketball tournament. Oh man, that would be horrible. We could lose those couple of games there. We had plans, we had thoughts of what might happen on a bad ice storm weekend. We did not have a plan, nor did you. What if school got canceled on March the 12th? None of us have a playbook to follow on that. So when Mr. Jackson realized that's going on, we went into let's see how much money we're going to lose mode. And to be honest with you, and I'm not telling you this for anything else but information, it looks like we're going to be down around $1 million from our gate that we normally take in. Now, in the speech and debate world, on a good year, on a normal year, we have a budget. That budget is something that, believe it or not, and I'll do my little screen share with you, just so you don't think I'm making this stuff up. This was the budget for a couple of years ago or last year, and you can see that basketball was a pretty major player, football. Music actually makes a little money, and if you get down to speech and debate, we actually lose a little money every year. That's not the end of the world. We bring in about 32,000. We had expenditures of 44. We brought in another 6,000, but we end up losing a little money every year. Once again, not the end of the world, because that's the great thing about being part of an association. When the association needs money, you gather from all the activities. So the good news is, because we lose $5,000 or $6,000, it's not that big a deal. That's in a normal year. We make up most of that money on our regional and our state entries. So our budget for this year for speech and debate is not going to look very good, but that's okay. Our expenditures are down. Hopefully we'll get close to not losing too much money. Mr. Jackson did apply for the payroll protection plan offered through the government, and he did receive some money through that. So I think about $250,000 we're going to hopefully get from the government as a nonprofit organization. We are making changes here in the office to do whatever we can do to save as much money as we can, to make sure we have a fall, to make sure we have a spring. I share all that with you not to feel sorry for us. We have a reserve fund. We're going to be fine for a while, but we do need to have a fall. I'm not going to lie to you. We need to have cheerleading. We need to have a football. We need to have some of those things, or else our association could be in trouble. There are some associations around the country who cannot open their doors or are having trouble opening their doors, and they're firing staff and they're letting secretaries go and all that kind of stuff. That could happen. Could it happen in Oklahoma? Sure, it could. Is it going to happen anytime soon? Not right now. We do have some reserve funds, and we're going to get through part of this stuff. But I'm going to tell you right now, we do need to have a fall. We as an association do. What would happen in the case, of the association folding? Well, first of all, don't panic. These speech and debate contests were held for many years before 1967 by other organizations. So there's a national speech and debate tournaments that were held in Oklahoma before the OSSAA took them on. The music contests were taken on, by other people. So I'm not saying that your activity would cease. Someone would probably come up and start running it. But we don't foresee the OSSAA closing anytime soon. We think it's going to go on. We think we're going to have a normal fall. And we're going to operate that way until further notice. But we did lose some money. And we are in money saving mode right now to do whatever we can do. So that's just information. Not asking you to feel sorry for us. I just want you to have that information. It is a fact that the OSSAA is going to lose roughly $1 million from all of our gates, from all of our golf and tennis and track and all the things that we normally do in the spring that we didn't get to have. So what I promised to try to do is to get this done around in an hour. What I would like to ask us to do, there are some things that I know that are on your mind. I want to give everybody an opportunity, at least for 20 minutes or so. If you have a question, I would respectfully ask you to just unmute yourself and not talk over the top of each other. And let's just see if you have a question you'd like to ask me or any information I can give you. Before we do that, I am telling you we'll probably have another Zoom meeting. I'll announce another Zoom meeting for anyone who wants to come once I get the studies of that aerosol study that the National Federation is doing. Once I get those results, I'll probably send out another email saying, hey guys, would you like to come and listen to the results? I'm going to disseminate that information. Okay. And I think that will be important, that you can go to your principal or your superintendent and have some factual information. Yes. You know what, when we put this plexiglass up between these two debaters, that, you know, and I will say to you, we are never going to have a 0% risk, everybody. You're going to have to get to where you understand we're trying to mitigate the risks. There's no way viruses happen. We can't stop the virus. It's here. The truth of the matter is it's going to be around for a while, until we get a virus vaccine or until we get herd immunity or all that stuff. So we're just trying to figure out ways to mitigate the risk to make our rooms not any more dangerous than an English or a history or a math room. The fine arts rooms need to be about the same mitigation level as far as I'm concerned. So I will open up to anybody who has a question, who would like to ask me anything. Who's first? That was easy. Nothing? Mr. Patterson, I'm going to ask you to say a word here as our state tournament director, if you don't mind. And I know that you were part of the decision-making process of canceling the tournament and things like that. Any comments that you want to add? Because you and I have talked a number of times, Mike.
The only thing I'd add, Mike, is that, you know, after we finished the May meeting, or even as a part of the May meeting, I just want everybody to know that the committee talked about, at least in some preliminary fashion, what would the world look like if we don't have any formal or in-person classes in the fall. Or, you know, almost every scenario that Mike has mentioned, we at least began to touch on some ideas about what that might look like, how the schedule might have to change. One of the other things that Mike hasn't mentioned this morning, but is a concern for me, is, you know, as if you've been following what's going along with, like the decision last month with regard to the OSSAA's position on activities, what does a world look like where the OSSAA essentially goes with what Mike labeled scenario 1, where it's business as usual, but will there be districts that won't allow tournaments to happen in their building because they don't want 2 or 3 or 4 or 500 or 1,000 kids from someplace else in their building? So all of those things, I just wanted to say that that's kind of an ancillary set of items to what Mike has talked about today, but there have been at least preliminary discussions about what might be possible solutions for almost every one of those scenarios. And there's certainly nothing concrete about those. I just want everybody to know that we're trying to be forward looking so that as we get closer and closer to what would be our normal season, should any number of variations of how this might play out occur, that there's a plan, or will be a plan, for what we might do as a community to do the things that we do, whether that includes some, as I said, changing calendar, changing dates for some of the things that we do, if it includes a virtual or distance kind of set of contests, if we are live, what do we do to modify the things that we do live? We've even on background, we've even begun to think a little bit about the worst case scenario that Mike kind of alluded to, is if the OSSAA is in real trouble. And as he mentioned too, before the OSSAA existed, there were speech contests in the state of Oklahoma. What does that world look like? And I don't want to mislead anybody. It's not like the committee is a long way down the road on this kind of discussion, because it's not. But I do want, as a I guess a comfort to everybody, to know that we at least we've begun thinking past what the normal world would be and what might be some solutions for the abnormal world that we may have to deal with. Mike, is that kind of what you wanted me to?
Absolutely. And I thank you for sharing that, Mike. And I will say this, we as a committee talked in May about how we need to be more flexible this year than we've probably been in a long time. When it comes to people saying, ooh, I can't have my tournament after all, the administration won't let me. We understand that there are administrators that are going to say, no, I don't want you to have that speech tournament. I know you signed up for it last year, but we hear the term deep cleaning. You've heard that a lot. And we have to come in and deep clean your school, whatever that exactly means. And it's going to cost us X number of dollars to deep clean the thing. There's a number of things out there that we're trying to figure out. And honestly, we don't know. It seems to me, Mike Plunkett's speaking now, this is the opinion part, that there's some research that says the warmer and drier the air, the less likely this virus is to live and do well. It doesn't like outside as much as it does inside. It likes cool and wet versus hot and dry. That's why some of the meatpacking plants are, having more outbreaks than outside or whatever. Thank you, Guyman. So now we're faced with those scenarios of, in this building, Carl Albert's supposed to play Guyman in football. Well, what happens if one of those schools is closed and it's a district game? And now what do we do? So at 1:15 every day, not that you care, we've been meeting as a staff saying, okay, we need to have this figured out. What if Guyman is closed and Carl Albert is supposed to play them? How do we do that in a regular season football game?
I'm going to go on record, Mike, and Guyman will accept the forfeit.
Thank you, Mike. I would also say to you that we are also looking at things like in a multi-bracketed thing. What if there's 50 cheerleading schools and 3 of them are closed? What do the other 47 do? Do you go on and play without them? Or, those are the kind of questions that we're having to answer in our office right now. We're coming up with policies about health concerns. We've been through this before with H1N1 and with SARS and some of that stuff. So we have a little bit of a playbook to fall back on. We've got a little experience, but we're rewriting some of those policies, and that's probably going to be voted on in July. So we'll have something in place that says this is what happens. Who's going to declare a school closed? Can the principal? Can the basketball coach say we're closed? Hey, my best shooter is sick. So you know what? We're going to say that kid's got COVID-19. We're shutting the school down. Should the speech coach be able to declare the school? No. We have to figure out, is the school board, is it the State Department of Health? Those are the kind of things that we're discussing right now every day at 1:30. So we're trying to make plans for those kinds of things. We have talked about scenarios, just like Mike said. What happens if? I have no doubt that speech and debate will do fine. I have no doubt the OSSAA is going to be fine, but we have to plan accordingly just in case. So that's what we're doing. I have shared a bunch of links over there on the right-hand side. I think everybody's got the links. What else can I answer for anybody who might want to ask a question or make a comment? Emily, are you trying to talk? Because if you are, we cannot hear you. I don't think you're muted, but for some reason we're not hearing you, Emily. If you want to type it into the chat, Emily, and I'll read it. Is there anybody else that wants to make a comment or ask a question on board? I will say to you that I want to thank everybody who served on this One Act Play Committee that met for about a year. We sent out a survey. We have made some changes. The speech committee voted on some. The board approved them, et cetera, et cetera. So long story short, thank you if you served on the One Act Play Committee. Just an FYI, one of the things we're changing, not this year, everybody listen closely, not for this year, but for the following year, we are going to change to a Thursday, Saturday, Tuesday format instead of a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And we're going to do that for regionals and state both. And we'll go into the more details about that when we get to the September meeting. The September meeting, by the way, is going to be virtual. We are not going to meet face-to-face in September. We are going to have that required managers meeting for anybody running a tournament. We're going to do that virtually. So to be honest with you, it may be the best way to go. Maybe we should have been doing it this way for years. We're going to mail your packets to you. Okay. Emily just wrote, you mentioned advocating for our programs and that you send out a link for contacting people. Can you share those emails, addresses, etc. with it? Yes, I will, Emily. I have a arts is essential kind of a document. I'll send that out in an email to everybody as opposed to sharing it here. Okay. And once again, I'm not talking bad about anybody's administration. I'm just telling you that there are conversations being had right now that don't include what we're teaching. So fight for your program, fight for your, no one else is going to do it for you. And I would say join forces with the art people, the music people, get together and go have a conversation with your superintendent and make sure they're not planning on taking your room to teach history, because that's happening in some parts of the country. Last call for any comments or questions. And if we don't have any, I guess we'll wrap this meeting up. Anybody want to make a comment, question?
Has there been consideration on the online thing? And is there a mechanism for those of us hosting a tournament in the fall to look at that like they did it, like we're doing at Nationals, and go that direction?
Britt, I think we did talk about that in May, and we said we were going to learn a whole lot more during the summer. Mike, I know you and Martin Glendenning have been part of some of these things. I'll turn over to Mike. Right now, Brett, are we considering allowing you to have a virtual tournament right now? That's not in the plans as of June the 10th, but that could change. Mr. Patterson, talk to me.
Yeah, I think the first thing I was going to say to Brett is the same thing that you just said, Mike, is at this point, if the OSSAA guidelines are business as usual, they're not going, my understanding is that they wouldn't approve a virtual tournament because they've already approved your regular tournament, right? So that's not going to change unless scenario 2 or scenario 3 is the way they go. And obviously, like Mike said, a lot of that's going to depend on what the State Department of Education ultimately decides to tell us, or what the governor decides to tell them, although those two entities aren't necessarily on the same page. So there's the first part of your answer is, as of this date right now, no, there are no plans to allow anybody to do a virtual tournament. However, one of the things that we did talk about at length in May was that those of us that are involved in the national tournament, especially those of us that are involved in terms of the structure of running the thing, are going to be a whole lot more well-versed about what a virtual tournament world can look like after the national tournament is over next week. And there has been, I know we've talked about, would it be possible to scale up and do virtual tournaments if that was the only method by which our activity could go forward? And I think that answer is yes. I think it might require some heavy lifting, and I think it would require a pretty steep education grade. I was talking to Mary Jane Burton before we got started. One of the things that we're going to find out about during the national tournament is there is no single piece of software that does everything that you need to do a virtual tournament. At least not that we have, not the TOC folks have. Nobody has that yet. So one of the things that we are going to be doing next week is dealing with really about 3 or 4 pieces of software to do all of the things that have to happen. But my belief is, I really do believe this, is if it comes to having to do, or if it's what we have to do to go forward, that a virtual experience can be done probably as early as, I think we could even do it at like the first weekend at Martin's tournament, if we had to. That's just based on doing the Senior Open for the NSDA a couple of weeks ago and the work we've done to prep for the NSDA. I think we could.
And
But as of
go ahead, Brett.
Can OSSAA print or put out the link so that people can go to the site and watch what's going on?
Nobody can watch
next
no,
week.
Nobody can watch.
All right.
They made that clear.
Yeah, that's not an OSA decision. That's NSDA, right?
Right.
NSDA the NSDA has already contemplated that and decided that
And
we have no observers. Now
Okay.
they will live stream the final rounds
Right.
Saturday. Those are open to, if you've got the live stream, anybody can watch it. But no, in just terms of like the regular run of business from Monday through, Friday, really, there aren't, the only people that are supposed to be in those virtual rooms are the kids that are competing, the judges that are judging, and staff that are making sure that the thing is running like it's supposed to.
And I will say one other thing, Mike, thank you for that information. And Brett, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
There are, we started this conversation saying you're not going to have all the answers. And I'll close out by saying this. I would love for you to walk up to your head football coach at your school or ask him the following question. How are you going to order your buses this year? Are you going to follow the CDC guidelines that say that we are supposed to use every other seat? And so in other words, are you ordering twice as many buses this year as you did last year? And the thing that I can't understand, and I don't have an answer, and these are the kind of things that are fluid that I don't understand. When two districts are doing things differently, if the husband and wife teach in two different districts, District A has a policy that says we're very, very much going to be social distance and careful, and this is in District B says, we're just going to go back and do what we want to do, which every school district decides now what they want to do. So if these two people are married and they are being very safe in one school and not so safe in another school, and the husband and wife come together at night and then they go back to the other schools, I don't know how effective social distancing is. By the same token, we are told that we're going to have every other row on the bus. So we're going to spread our kids out on the football team. We're going to drive them up to, I keep using Guyman because we're going to drive them to Guyman for the football team. So we get off the bus. We're going to go bang heads for 2 hours. We're going to fall on top of each other. We're going to sweat. We're going to do all those things and breathe and all that. And then at the end of the game, we're not going to let them shake hands or do high fives because that's too much social distancing. And then we're going to get them back on the bus and spread them out and drive them home. I don't get that, but it's, I'm not the one that gets to make those decisions. I don't understand if the football team's out there doing this and the cheerleaders are going, wait a minute, we were told we can't do any stunts because we're touching each other while we do our stunts. Well, these are the same girls that we've been together for 9 months. But the football team's over there banging on that kid from Guyman who they've never met before. But yet I don't understand that. So the cheerleaders are going to say, well, that's an acceptable risk that the football team has decided to do. So the cheerleaders are going to say, well, then we'll take the acceptable risk. I know these people. Let us do our stunts. So now we have the stunts going on the sideline. And now you look up in the band and the band's sitting 6 feet apart. And the band's going to say, now, wait a minute. How come the cheerleaders are touching in the football? And the way you go. And it just rotates down the hill. I don't have the answer to those questions. And I don't know if anyone does. And I've been talking to a lot of states, and everybody is doing the same kind of head scratching. If social distancing is great for the 5 or 6 hours you have them at school, then they go home. What happens then? Every park is open. Every swimming pool is open. Go down to the mall. They're hanging all over the top of each other. So, what I don't know is where this is going to be in the 1st of August. It seems to me like every week that goes by, things get a little more relaxed and a little more relaxed. So we don't know where it's going to be in August. I would love to tell you I do know. I don't. It seems to me that it has become an acceptable risk. Most people have said, I'm willing to go out to a restaurant. I'm willing to do this or whatever. It's an acceptable risk. So what will be the acceptable risk come August? Don't have any idea. So there's the head scratcher I'm going to leave you with. All right. I don't know how that, I don't know why you won't let them do a high five, but yet you can beat all over each other on the football field. But anyway, that's what we've decided to do. I appreciate your attendance here today. I hope that this information in the chat box will be helpful to you. I'll try to send some out as well as an email. If anyone want to use that stuff, feel free. Thank you for your time. Without any further delay, Thank you, Missy, for being part of the meeting. And all you all have a safe summer. I'll try to keep you informed and in the loop as the best I can. Most important thing is stay safe, okay? And I'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much.